This is the Navimow X4 robot lawnmower. This video is not sponsored, and I can confidently say after using this robot mower for about 2 months, it's the best robot mower I've ever tested. The cut quality is phenomenal. The 4-wheel drive and articulating front wheels means it can get into tight places and it never gets stuck. It doesn't damage the lawn thanks to the traction control system, and it has a great combination of NRTK, Wi-Fi, 4G, physical sensors, and cameras to navigate very close to edges within inches without ever getting lost. I actually used this mower at my parents' house for the past 2 months, and not once has it ever stopped, been stuck, or had any issues at all. It's truly a hands-free mower, and without ruining the whole video, I can confidently say this would be a great purchase for you, for any elderly relatives, or even for a vacation or rental property that maybe you don't regularly visit. Now, it's been a while since I started a video off with such a strong endorsement, but I really do like this thing. There are some downsides I'll mention later, but honestly, not that many compared to the rest of the landscape of robot mowers that all make some pretty big trade-offs in navigation and cut quality and drive and range. This one seems to nail pretty much everything. Now, there are 2 models of this, the X430, which covers 1 acre, and the X450, which covers slightly larger 1.5 acres. This one right here is the X450. Generally, they're exactly the same model, just slightly longer range on one than the other, and I'll talk more about that later. As far as mapping and setup goes, this is really simple. You have hands-free auto mapping if you want. If you have open fields, it doesn't really make sense to do this, but it does a really good job of detecting the edges of sidewalks and flower beds and driveways, and if your lawn is mostly contained by fences and driveways and stuff, then you can do this. Manual mapping uses your phone like a remote. It's just like basically a single joystick, and it drives around the edges and it maps it fairly easily like that. And it moves fairly quickly as well. You're looking at about 2.5 feet per second, so you can cover a pretty large space in not that much time. Now, when you create the map, you have several different things you could do. You can add cutting zones, no-go zones, channels between zones, and you can have a lot of different zones. And the idea here is that different zones might be cut on different schedules to different lengths. They might be separated physically, and you might need a little channel to go between them. Maybe, for example, at my parents' house, they have like a sand mound, which is separated by their driveway, and then they have their main lawns. And the map, when you draw it, is going to be showing like a 2D basic map, but eventually, after it mows a couple times, the cameras will be able to create basically like a satellite image is what it looks like, but it's using the, just the cameras on board and drawing out what your map actually looks like. And you can easily edit the map. It navigates to certain points on the map, and you can cut out edges or make it longer. So if you don't get it right the first time, you can always adjust that. Now, one little caveat with this is when you first set it up, this is something that I found a little hiccup with this, and I've read a lot of reviews because I wanted to see if other people had the same thing. And this is probably the most common complaint I've seen online, is that people complain about where the mower is actually going to be placed. So this uses what's called NRTK to navigate, which is network RTK, slightly different than just having a single tower. And essentially what this means is when you put down the mower in one spot, it needs to have a pretty clear view of the sky. So right at the edge of your building is most likely not going to be the best place to put this. I originally placed it near the edge of a building, thinking it was kind of on a corner, I could maybe see the sky pretty well, and it just wasn't able to get signal. So I had to move it out into a landscaping bed. Once I did that, it had great signal right away, and I had no problems. But just be aware of this. You're gonna have to put this mower slightly away from the house so you have a better view of the sky. As far as mowing goes, this has 2 180-watt cutting motors, so 2 discs on the bottom. Surprisingly good cut, like noticeably better than most of the other robot mowers I've used. Looking at like the sand mound and everything else, every time I go to my parents' house, I'm impressed by how good and clean the cut quality is. You don't have any kind of ruts or ripples. Everything just looks really like perfectly mowed. You have a 17-inch cut width as well, and you're able to have this mow in several different patterns that I'll talk about in a minute. The blades actually retract in between 2 wheels. So unlike most mowers, which just have 1 wheel on the bottom and the blades are on there and they're fully exposed, just screwed onto the wheel, this has 2 wheels. So the 1 wheel is protecting the blades, and if they hit something, it'll spin back in and retract, and the entire blade is covered by that metal wheel there, and only half the blades are in there. Then you have another wheel behind that, and you have more blades on the back. So you kind of have the blades that are staggered a little bit, which does help with mulching, especially on longer grass. So in total, you're working with 12 blades. That may sound complicated. Hopefully the B-roll I'm showing you right now helps to explain what I'm talking about. Also, while we're looking at the underside, you can see this also has a pretty decent rake on here on the front to manage thicker stuff and prevent, getting stuck on like sticks and things like that. The rear axle pivots a lot like the front axle on a tractor, just like back and forth. So that's going to help if you're going through uneven terrain. And the front wheels have independent suspension. Plus, as I mentioned, the front wheels articulate individually for turning, which is kind of interesting, allowing this to get into tighter spaces and mow really well, in my opinion, around smaller objects, if it detects obstacles or anything like that. Also, this can cut anywhere from 3/4 of an inch, which for robot mowers is incredibly low, all the way up to 4 inches, which is a pretty large range. Most robot mowers don't have nearly that level of a range. And while it's moving, it can go up to 2.6 feet per second, as I mentioned before. That's going to give you a faster, large yard cutting, a little bit more efficient, but you can customize all of this in the app if you want it to go slower and do, a more deliberate slow cut, maybe on a smaller lawn, for example. It also has an adaptive blade, which means that it can adjust on uneven terrain for a more consistent cut, so it doesn't, high center itself and scalp a lot, and you also don't have any extra long areas where you have a hill that suddenly goes up. Also, this actually could do a pretty decent job of cutting taller grass, as you can see right here. It's also, unsurprisingly, able to handle some very steep slopes. They rate it for up to 84% or 40 degrees. I don't have any hills that are that steep, but every hill that I've had it go over, even driving laterally on steep slopes, it didn't slide down. The 4-wheel drive and the articulating wheels did a really good job. It also can climb over objects up to 2.8 inches tall, so little rocks or sticks or anything like that. It shouldn't have a problem. Like I said, I didn't do much cleanup on this lawn. I didn't really make sure that there was nothing out there, and it still never got stuck. There were sticks I watched it drive over. It goes to the edge of the woods, and it didn't have a problem. Also, one of the biggest benefits of this is that this lawn in particular, where I had it running for the past 2 months, has a very wet area. And in years past, the grass would get really high because it was too wet for a push mower and way too wet for a riding mower. You would leave big ruts in there. It would get so muddy. And once the grass gets a little longer, then it takes way longer for the grass to dry then. You just don't have as much airflow and as much light there. But this is a fairly light machine that spreads its weight out pretty well. It's able to cut there without any issue at all. And because it's always short grass, it's mowing every single day, the lawn also dries a lot quicker than it used to. So cut quality, I give it a big thumbs up. As far as navigation and avoidance, allegedly this can cut less than 2 inches from the edges. If you're going to do this, I would recommend using auto mapping as opposed to manual mapping. There was, however, one spot that it seemed to miss. And this is like a weird little corner of the lawn where it drives, it goes around, and it comes back. And where it makes that turn, there's a small patch of grass in the middle that it just doesn't mow. And I'm not sure why it didn't want to back up and mow that. Maybe it didn't realize it wasn't mowing that, but it was missing one spot. That's the only complaint I've had as far as, what it's mowing and what it's not. And as far as how it's positioning itself, it's using two main things. One is NRTK, which is network RTK. There's no subscription. This is free for the life of the product as long as you're using it. And it gives you tri-frequency network RTK. I'll talk more about that in a second. The second thing it has is vision enhancement. So you have what they call V-SLAM cameras. So like 360 cameras looking all the way around the robot. And that's going to be for, some for navigation, but mostly for obstacle avoidance and detection. But talking more about the network RTK. So you have an RTK station that you put up, and you could just use local RTK, but using network RTK allows you to go in many more places that most robot mowers, which rely on local RTK, typically struggle with. So I've seen people mow very long grass roads with this. Normally, that would be way out of range for a normal RTK station. It doesn't work. I've heard about people mowing underneath solar panels with this. I personally have mowed all the way around a house, which most other mowers get lost on the opposite side of a house or around bushes. This has not had a problem with any of that. So locating with NRTK seems to be doing incredibly well. The cameras are used to mostly, in my opinion, avoid obstacles. They allegedly detect 200 different obstacles. I guess that could be like squirrels and stuff like that. Honestly, from my testing, I had it navigate around a couple things. One, I had my tripod set up for a time lapse of it just mowing, and it navigated around my tripod without hitting it. So I suspect that means it's going to be good with chairs, tables, umbrellas, and other tall posts that are going to be in front of it. It did a really good job. It never even bumped my tripod. It navigated around, it checked from all sides, and the vision can see in 360 degrees, like I said, but it can also see both on the ground and up a little bit above the mower. So if it's driving under a table or a chair or something like that, hopefully it should not be getting stuck. I've had previous robot mowers from other companies that are not able to see above them, and they wedge themselves underneath a vehicle, then somebody doesn't see it, they pull away, and they end up running over the mower. Hopefully that doesn't happen with this one. At least from my experience so far, it seems to be pretty good at obstacle avoidance. It also navigated around this little pink helmet here without hitting it, so I think it would therefore probably be pretty good at avoiding children's toys. However, the blades are retractable, so I'm not saying it wouldn't damage things if it did hit them, but if it hit a hard object, you don't have to worry about that breaking the mower. It did not, however, navigate around. I just threw a red ratchet strap, very visible, but instead it just ran it over. So it didn't get tangled up. Maybe that was just fortunate chance here, but I would recommend ensuring you don't have loose strings, hoses, ropes, or anything like that in your lawn. It could potentially hit them. It also did navigate around me. I stood in front of it, and I think this means it should avoid most animals. It also has not been a problem for the dog or actually for any other small animals there. Now, I do not have any hedgehogs here. In fact, they're actually illegal to have here. But if you live somewhere that has hedgehogs, you may know that robot mowers sometimes can be a big danger to them. They kind of just like curl up and hide as opposed to running, and then they end up getting injured or severely injured or killed by robot mowers. Now, this one, like I said, has a big rake in the front, has obstacle avoidance, so I'm a little bit more optimistic, but obviously I haven't tested it. And if you live somewhere with hedgehogs, maybe take some extra precautions and see if you're able to, protect those little guys by putting up little fences or something. Also, this does have a traction control system, which adjusts the torque to all four wheels so it doesn't skid and tear up the grass if it's wet or driving up a hill. And I've actually seen this work very well in some dusty or muddy parts of the lawn where it's going up a hill, it adjusts the torque and it gets up just fine without ever spinning its wheels. And another testament to the navigation, I had to put this in a pretty tricky spot. Remember how I said before that the base station where it's charging, because again, this will drive around and mow and it navigates back to its own base station, it recharges itself. I had to put that base station in the middle of landscaping. It had to be further away from the house, but I didn't want it sitting in the middle of the yard. And in order to get there, it was navigating between some pretty oversized shrubs, and it has had no issue at all getting in or out of the base station for the entirety of the season so far. As far as what the mow looks like, it I think looks really nice, but you can change the pattern in the app. So it can either rotate and change the pattern every couple days. You can have it go the same direction all the time. You can also have it mow designs in your lawn, like letters, basic shapes, numbers, maybe if it's like someone's birthday. It's a fun idea. I haven't really tried that, to be honest. I mostly just have it mow regularly, and I think it looks quite good. But let's talk about the design of this mower. It's a fairly large mower, no doubt. It's larger than most other, more affordable tiny mowers. I think that makes sense. It's meant for a larger property. You need a bigger battery on there, four-wheel drive. All this stuff adds complexity and adds size and bulk to the mower, which means one downside is that if the battery ever died, if it ever did get stuck somewhere, this would be very difficult to bring it back to the base station without having like a wheelbarrow or just a second person, or maybe you could pull it along with the wheels, but I think, it's going to be a little bit less convenient to move this back to the base station. This does have a large stop button on the top. That's a big safety thing. It also has bumpers on the front, also for safety. The cameras, again, as I mentioned, for safety. And it has a 3.5-inch LCD color display. It's not a touchscreen. It just has 4 simple buttons on there. You've got like a, toggling between things. You've got an OK button. The display tells you what the option is. You can toggle between different things. You can tell it to go home. You can tell it to cut. And you can actually change a surprising amount of settings on this. So scheduling for this mower. The whole point is for it to be autonomous. This could be mowing different zones, different days, different times, different cutting heights. There's a lot of things you can change. There is also a rain sensor on board, so it can skip days with inclement weather. If you want it to cut at night, it has headlights. I usually don't cut at night, but some people do like to because, your kids are probably not playing in the lawn at night, not nearly as much as they would be in the day. So it's gonna be nice that it's not in the way when they're out there during the day. And it can even act as like a deer or animal deterrent if it's driving around your lawn at night. This is not a push mower, of course, but hear me out. The whole point of this is to mow very differently than a push mower. And many people struggle with this. They want this to mow once a week, just like they did with their old push mower. But truthfully, that is not the way robot mowers are meant to work. Ideally, this is going to cut off 1/4 inch of your grass every single day. Your grass is going to look better every day. It's also healthier for your grass. And because this is silent and really not in the way, it's honestly not even that noticeable, it's going to be much better to have this run every day. I would highly recommend don't do it once a week. If you want to not do it every day, maybe do it every like 3 days. But ideally, this is going to be best at cutting a little bit of grass at a time as opposed to, cutting off like 2 inches of grass all at once. Another thing to know, I've had no issues with this, so I have not contacted customer service, but I did some research. I always do research when I make these videos, so it's not just my experience, but I see problems that other people have and I try to replicate them. And one thing that kept coming up was the customer service with Navimow was actually really good. People were really happy with how responsive they've been. So if you have any experience with the customer service from Segway or Navimow, leave a comment down below. It's going to be good to have more information from other people who've tried contacting them down there. As far as durability and theft prevention, this is not a cheap device. This is right now on sale for, I think, like $400 off, and it's going to be $2,100. So MSRP on this is like $2,500, but theft prevention and durability obviously matter a lot. I've only used this for 2 months, so I can't say what it's going to be like in 3 or 4 years, obviously, but we can kind of make some inferences. One, the IP66 water and dust resistance is a pretty big positive. You can see that this is able to sit out in the rain, but I would highly recommend you spend an extra, I think it's like $40 or $50 to get this little cover that goes over it. They call it the garage or like the base station garage, and that'll keep it out of the weather a little bit more. This also does have Apple Find My enabled, so just set that up. That's not going to cost you anything. There's no subscription for that. And that way, if it ever gets lost or stolen, as long as there's an iPhone nearby, you should be much better off finding it. This has GPS, this has an out-of-boundary alarm, this has a lift alarm, you have a PIN code, and it does come with a 3-year warranty on the device and the charging station and 2-year warranty on the battery. As far as what I'm worried about, I mean, originally I was worried that the articulating wheels, that motor would get stuck on, sticks and rocks, and I was worried that that would wear out and not perform that well. So far, I've had no issues with it. I mean, the only thing is it does show dirt a lot. I don't think that really matters at all, but it's black, it gets dusty. You might want to clean it off every now and then. Don't pressure wash it, of course, but just wipe it off. So, pros and cons. Pros. This thing is essentially silent. No more gas engines running twice a week. It's also hands-free, which saves you so much time every week. You just do a little bit of edge trimming with the weed whacker, and your lawn looks amazing, not just once a week, but every single day as this thing mows. Like I said, every single day. This is also able to handle very large areas with excellent cut quality. It can handle very intricate lawns going around a lot of things thanks to NRTK. And because it's mowing a little bit at a time, you don't have grass clippings that are going to blow around into your pool or your sidewalks. You don't have to do any leaf blowing. This just mulches a 1/4 inch of grass that it cuts right into the lawn every day. It's also obviously safer than a riding mower if you're on steep slopes. You don't have to worry about tipping over. It's a mower, and if it tips over, nobody gets hurt. It's just a mower. And this last one, some people might chalk it up as a con, but I'm going to put this on the positive side here. There is a cellular connection, and it's not required. It's fairly affordable, which is why I'm giving it a positive here. Some people would say, oh, I don't want a subscription. Like I said, this is optional, and usually you see these subscriptions at like $10 a month or $5 a month. This is actually $32.90 for an entire year to have that cellular connection, which, like I said, could help you find the mower if it was stolen, or could help it navigate, more tricky spots. Now, I used the Navimow X3 last year, and compared to that, the X4 is infinitely better. I've really not seen as much improvement generation over generation in a really long time among really any product. Navimow obviously worked really hard on this, and I think they did a great job. One more thing, if you have pets and you have a gate and you want to mow 2 different places, which is very common, they sell something called the Mow Gate. Now, the Mow Gate looks like a dog door basically, but it communicates with your mower, and your mower drives up. It uses the camera to make sure no dog or animals nearby. It then opens the gate, drives in, and closes the gate. I'm sure it's not foolproof, but it seems like a pretty cool idea that should help it mow 2 different places without your animals escaping. Now, I'll give you my conclusion on this in a second, but before you just get excited and go ahead and buy it, I'll have a couple links down below. One, of course, for the product, but a second one is that they have a Measure My Lawn tool to figure out which model is best for you. If you don't know how many acres or square feet your lawn is, I recommend checking out that tool. They also have a tool to see the coverage of network RTK to see if this is relevant for you. If you're not in an area that works, then maybe this is going to be a slightly different performance for navigation. So I have those links down below. Check them out. But not everything is perfect. There are some drawbacks here. One, I didn't see any kind of security watchdog mode that lets me view the camera while I'm away. Not that that's a deal breaker, but considering how many cameras are on this device, that would be a really nice feature to have. Also, it's pretty large and heavy. As I mentioned, moving this around could be a challenge if the battery ever did die. And honestly, the extension cable it comes with for the RTK, the local RTK tower, is not very long. So it's not really gonna be that far away, meaning you're gonna have this thing not on your roof, it's gonna be kind of like right in the middle of your yard. It may take a bit of repositioning, so setup is not necessarily hard, but if you're not tech savvy, you may want to ask a friend to set it up, maybe a family member, maybe hire a handyman. Correct setup is absolutely essential to get this thing to actually function hands-free. And another drawback that didn't apply to me, but I think this really could mow larger areas. Like if it did, technically it's rated for 1 acre in a day, but even though it's only rated for like 1.5 total acres, I think if you did 1 acre per day and you cut the grass every 3 or 4 days, it makes sense. You should theoretically be able to do like a 3 or 4 acre area, but there's actually a software lock in the app that limits the area you can map. They say it's for safety reasons. I'm not sure how that logic tracks, but just be aware of that. A lot of people are gonna say, can I do 1.9 acres? Unfortunately, no. The software is going to stop you from doing that, at least at the time of making this video. So my conclusion on this thing's pricey. At over $2,000, it's a real investment, but I think it's worth it, as most people with a 1 acre lawn would probably buy a riding mower anyway, which not only takes a couple hours of your time per week, but also costs at least like $2,000 or $3,000. Maybe a riding mower will last longer, maybe it won't. Maybe you use it for other things, in which case, go ahead and do that. But at least for me, I think this is a very compelling buy that saves you a lot of time, is healthier for your lawn, leaves your lawn looking really good, and of course doesn't require you to own and maintain and store a large riding mower. So that's my take on the Navimow X4 series. Leave a comment below and let me know, what should I compare this to? I know a lot of people have been asking for a comparison with the Limo, maybe the new Teramo would be interesting. Leave a comment and I'll make a comparison between the top 4 comments, not which ones get the most like. I'll be counting how many comments there are, so be sure to leave a new comment for what I should compare this to. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm Mike O'Brien, and I'll see you in that comparison.